Good afternoon, YouTube. Flightsimguy here. Today we're doing something a little bit different. As I said before, moving on from the Extreme Prototypes Learjet to this bad boy right here. By the way, I'm at the airport in Indianapolis, and this right here is the Lockheed L1011. This is Captain Sim's implementation of this aircraft, and what we're going to do, first we need to change my view. See if I can do that. There we go. What we're going to do is, for this episode, all I'm going to do is talk about this legendary aircraft, and it is indeed legendary. Go over the technical specs and whatnot, and then do a tour of the cockpit and go through the engine start procedures. Alright, so this is the Air Canada delivery. The L1011, man, it has such a storied history. It's all retired now. Nobody flies them. There's actually one L1011 still in operation in the United States, and that is with NASA. They use it as a high-flying research aircraft, and whenever they have to launch stuff into space from an aircraft, they use their L1011. I'm gonna see if I can Google and see if I can find more information on NASA's L1011. If there are any other ones in the world still flying, there's probably a handful, maybe less than a dozen. Alright, so this is a Lockheed aircraft, and you're probably thinking, well, Lockheed, they are primarily a defense contractor. They are. Well, they used to make commercial jets, and they're not as good as making commercial jets as they are as making warplanes. Actually, okay, that's not supposed to happen. There we go. Actually, no, Lockheed is pretty good at making commercial jets, technically speaking. They're just not very good at selling them. This plane was top of the line when it came out in the late 60s, early 70s. It was the most technologically advanced aircraft at the time. It could do a Cat 3 landing, full auto land. They did a flight in the early 70s. I believe it was back in 72, where they did a complete takeoff and land without ever having to touch the controls. 100% automatic. Okay, one of these planes is starting up. And it's got to be this one to my left. The ones on the right, they still have their doors open. Anyway, the L1011 was very, very popular among pilots and the crew and the passengers. Everybody loved this plane, and I'll tell you why. I was, doing some research, and I saw the pictures that they posted of the interior of this aircraft, and I'm like, that is not the inside of a plane. That's got to be the inside of a movie set, because it was so huge. I mean, the ceiling was high. I mean, it wasn't cramped in any way, shape, or form. And I'm thinking, wow. I mean, this was the original wide body. I mean, look at the size of this thing. Not cramped at all. And so the passengers loved it for, the space and the comfort. The pilots loved it for the technological innovations. They enjoyed flying it. And the crew, everybody just loved it. The L1011 was very, very popular. However, it was a commercial failure. This aircraft, it didn't sink Lockheed, but it almost sunk Rolls-Royce, who was on tap to deliver the engines for this plane. They won a contract to deliver brand new engines for this aircraft, and they couldn't deliver on time, and they went bankrupt and had to get a bailout from the British government. So Rolls-Royce almost bit the farm, supplying engines for this plane. And in the process of doing so, it gave Lockheed's competitor, which was Douglas Aircraft, it gave them the opportunity to deliver their product, which is the DC-10, to market first. So how you tell the difference between an L1011 and a DC-10? Well, very, very simple. With the DC-10, the third engine, or second engine, is in the vertical stabilizer. With the L1011, the second engine is in the fuselage, with the nozzle pointing out the tail, just like the 727. Now, the DC-10 and the MD-11, well, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between the two, since it's more or less the same airframe. But here's how you can tell the difference between the L1011 and the DC-10. Also, the Lockheed L1011 is known as a trijet or the TriStar. It's a trijet just like the DC-10, but this is a TriStar, not the DC-10. So yeah, it was a commercial failure. What it boils down to is there just wasn't enough room in the market for both planes. Lockheed needed to sell 500 of these to break even. They only made 250. After that, they were like, you know what? We're taking our ball and going home, and they exited the commercial aircraft market. It just wasn't their thing. Douglas sold about 410 of the DC-10s, um, and they had a hard time with that. People give it all sorts of name. Because of all the accidents, had an issue with the cargo door. It suffered its fair share of accidents. So it's a mixed story between the DC-10 and the L1011. When Lockheed developed their angle, what they wanted to do, they knew that the 707s and the DC-8s were coming to their end of life, so they figured they'd go ahead and develop this as a replacement, for those aircraft with, giving the airlines an option. And at the time, there was only one wide body, on campus, which was the 747. So Lockheed figured, hey, let's go to market. We'll compete with the 747s. We'll give airlines more choices, and everybody who has 707s and DC-8s and need to replace them will step in. And with regards to the business execution, it just did not go as planned. So it's a shame because the L1011, I like it. It's I don't know. It's just one of those aircraft that just draws your attention. I don't recall ever if I flew on one of these back in the day. I probably did, just didn't really notice it. Very, very legendary and storied aircraft. Wide body. The only other wide body jet I've flown is the Captain Sim 767 and the Captain Sim 777. This Captain Sim L1011, I've flown this one. I've flown the Justflight's L1011, and I'll do a video on that one also. The flight model, definitely different from Justflight. I'll go into the differences in a different video, so we'll hold off on that for now. All right, let's go ahead and go inside. And you can just tell by how this cockpit is designed that this was, a big plane, or they gave a lot of space. I mean, look how quote unquote far the overhead panel is. And I'd have a hard time flying the real thing. I mean, even though I have long arms, look where these damn controls are. It's like you have to reach all the way over there, meshing all these things back and forth. And this plane has a fully functional, a fully modeled flight engineer station. There we go. And when it comes to flying these jets, it's as far as I'm concerned, you set up what you need to set up back here, and it's a set it and forget it kind of thing, because it's bad enough you have to be flying, doing the job of two pilots. Being a flight engineer also is just a little bit too much. All right, this is a Captain Sim aircraft. So what that means is outstanding external modeling and animations up the wazoo. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Now with Captain Sim aircraft, this works for all the planes, 757, 67, 77, and this one. Shift 2 brings up the primary interface for everything. Alright, so click on the plane, you get all the doors. This plane is a good plane to fly if you're going to be using GSX. The Justflight L1011, you can open and close the main door and the cargo door, and that's it. But with this one, you can open and close an awful lot of stuff. So let's go ahead and go outside. Shift 2, hit this, and see what we can bring up. Alright, so you can open the radome right there. Zoom out a little bit. Emergency exit. Main door, service door, and this is Captain Sim, so it comes with a hot flight attendant. You can also do animation for the outflow valves. Cargo door. This is on the other side, obviously. Let's go ahead. Oops. There it is right there. Plugs. Passenger door. On this side, there it is right there. Service doors, there it is right there. You can also do the engine cowling for the center, left, and right, and the engine covers. There they go right there. Service access. Passenger door on this side, that pops open right there. Service door on the other side. And then you can put on your wheel chocks. Make sure your plane doesn't roll away. Open up some more cargo doors and a service door. You can show your hot, sexy flight attendant, which is right there. See if I can get a good. That's as far as I can go. Escape slides. Wow. Passenger door, and those two, and we'll also show the pilots. So, and a lot of this stuff is cosmetic, but this is Captain Sim. They make up for what they lack in terms of flight model and sound. So, definitely you want to use this one if you want to use GSX. All right, let's go ahead and close everything. And we'll just click these. And there. Close the exit. And that's that. This is a weather radar. Let's go ahead and go back inside. Shift 2, this brings up the interface. This weather radar right here, it shows it here, it's actually down here, and it works. It's fully functional. This right here is a 2D implementation of the INS. As you may recall, the INS is a precursor, or is a forefather for the flight management computer. What you could do with this is punch in up to 9 waypoints by their longitude and latitude coordinates, and once you turn on and hit nav, the plane would fly it. Big difference is nowadays you have the screen with the magenta and the moving map, but this is what they had before. And I'll go ahead and do a video on how to program this and set it up, but I don't think I'll ever use it because just not worth the effort. I'd rather fly VOR to VOR. And in this case, the aircraft has 2. Some models of the L1011 that you have has 3. All right. And this is your moving map. Now, this is the knee board. Unfortunately, it does not come with a checklist. And that's another thing I should add. So, when I was doing my research for the L1011, there is not a lot of technical information on the internet. I could not find a decent checklist. I found this one checklist, Captain Sim, based on the tutorial of Tom Beckett, British Airways Virtual, available on AvSim. I downloaded this from AvSim. This is the best checklist that I could find. Performance data, takeoff data, V-speeds, all of that stuff. I could not find it to save my life. The documentation that comes with the Captain Sim L1011 is pretty impressive and thorough. One's 100 page, another one's 300. The reference for all the systems and instruments, but it doesn't have the performance data that you need to quote unquote fly it professionally. For instance, you're never gonna know what APR setting you're gonna need based on temperature, load, and whatnot. I couldn't find it. Okay. I was able to locate an old Delta L1011 flight manual, like 1,000 pages or so, on a Russian AvSim site. But what it is a PDF file of the original manual, which was all scanned. And so each page was a scanned implementation or a scanned image of the real thing, which means the file is enormous. It's like 22 megabytes, I don't recall. And printing it would just be too much trouble. So yes, there's a lack of real-world or simulation documentation, a decent documentation for the L1011, which is unfortunate. All right, what else we got? ATC window right here, and we talked about the weather radar, so we can go ahead and close that out. All right, let's go ahead and do a quick tour of the cockpit. Here you have your tiller, weather radar. Here you got your system clock, which actually works. Your speed thing right here. This is all standard pilot instruments. Don't need to go into any of these details. You all know how this all this stuff works. Here's where you set your decision height. Here's your flaps status. And over here you have your instruments for your engines. You have your EPR, N1, EGT, N3, and fuel flow. So it's N3. Where the hell is N2? N2 is actually back here at the engineer station. It's around here somewhere. Ah, here it is. Engine 1, 2, 3, and here's your N2. I want to say N2 and N3 are the same with regards to what you see. When you go to start, you wait until the engine spool up to about 22, 23, then you add the fuel. Same thing. Okay, here's your backup artificial horizon. Here's your backup altitude, backup speed gauge, vertical speed, altitude setting. Come up here. Here you have. All right, so this is kind of weird. Here you have nav 1. Okay, your course for nav 1 is all the way over here. For the pilots, like all the way over here. And here you have your flight director or your autopilot. Here's your auto throttle, ATS, automatic throttle system. Let's see here, I got a thing mapped to it. Here we go. Here you can set your vertical speed, alt, indicated airspeed, the usual stuff, heading, hold, blah blah. This your flight directors for the pilot, co-pilot, and here's where you can set where we go to VOR, or INS, or FMS, pilot course, co-pilot course. Here you can set up your auto land, all this other stuff. Here you can arm your altitude, and here's your nav 2. We already talked about the engine instruments, gear selector, here are your flap settings. I'm sorry, here's your stabilizer and your spoiler. Here's your flaps. Here are your co-pilot instruments. Here you got your INS for the co-pilot and the pilot. Here you have your throttles, and here you have your spoiler. And I'll talk about DLC in a second. Direct lift control, something like that. Here are your flap settings. Here is your trim over here. And here are your fuel cutoff knobs. Come on down here. Here you have your radios, COM1, COM2. And you got your two ADFs, and you have your aileron and your rudder trim. Alright, let's go to the overhead. Alright, what do we got? You have your lights. You got some more lights, seat belts, and lights. Let's start on this side. You have your anti-skid, windshield wiper. Alright, so these controls right here. To make a long story short, it took me a while to figure out what these are. What these controls do is these systems monitor your primary flight control. So they keep track of your stabilizer, your vertical stabilizer, horizontal stabilizer, your flaps, your wings, and your rudder, and your ailerons. All that does is it keeps track of it, of that, and if stuff doesn't work, it tells you, or if stuff starts to malfunction. And up here, you have DLC Auto. You can enable and disable DLC. Let's talk about DLC. First, let me confirm. I think it's direct lift control. DLC is direct lift control. This system was implemented on the Lockheed L1011, and how it works is this. Okay, when you're coming into land, all right. Let's say you're on the ILS, You're coming in and you've captured the glide slope and you're coming down. I'm sorry. If you're flying in on the glide slope or with the ILS on the approach hold, you probably don't need DLC. Let's say you're coming in doing a hand landing, okay, and you're about 12, 15 miles out coming in to land. Once you reach a certain flap setting, I think it's like 28 or 22, I don't recall. But once you reach a certain flap setting, if I can find my flaps, I want to say it's 22, between 22 or 23. Once you hit that flap setting, DLC kicks in, and as you can see right here on your spoiler, it says your DLC range. Okay, so you're on your way down, hand flying the ILS, and you hit flaps 22. DLC kicks in. So you're coming in and you need to make a change, right? When you push down on the yoke in a regular aircraft without DLC, what happens is the elevators move, and in this case they're not moving because the hydraulics is not on, but it moves down, pitching the plane down so you can get back into the glide slope. All right, that's a normal plane. With DLC, what happens is when you push the nose down, your spoiler comes up a little bit. And when you bring your nose back this way, the spoiler goes down. So it's an inverse relationship between the spoilers and the yoke. What that means is, by the way, when DLC is on in the L1011 and you're coming in and you pull back or you push down on the yoke, your elevators aren't activated anymore. Okay? So, got off topic a little bit there. When you push down, this comes back up. What it does is it pops up the spoilers just a little bit, killing lift, okay? So that when you kill lift, the wings don't want to fly anymore, so the plane actually sinks. So it's like doing a long way or an extended version of needing to get down, pushing the stick forward, bringing back the spoilers, popping the boards out, killing lift on the wings, causing the plane to sink down a little bit. By that same token, if you're going too low and you want to go up a little bit, by bringing the yoke back, the spoilers go down, regenerating lift, and the plane glides back into the glide slope. What does all this mean? Big picture, it provides a much more comfortable approach for the passengers when you're flying coming in on final. By using direct lift control, it modulates or it smooths out the yanking, the effects of yanking the stick back and forth. By doing away with the elevator movement, it translates those, or it moves those, transfers those to the spoilers. So the plane adjusts itself in the ILS more smoothly. One of the reasons why customers love the L1011. Only problem is, Justflight's implementation of DLC doesn't work, to put it plain and simple. Once it kicks in, you lose complete control to pitch up or down. You can still go left to right, but your up and down, these airports are so noisy. Justflight's implementation of DLC, you lose the ability to adjust your profile, your vertical position in the glide slope or in the ILS, because it simply doesn't work. The only way you can do that, the only way you can go up or down, is to use trim, and I wasn't able to complete a flight. What you have to do is turn it off. So, with the Justflight L1011, you turn off your DLC by doing it here. Now, I've flown the Captain Sim L1011, and we'll have to double check to see if the DLC is implemented the same way. Alright, so, get back on course. All of this stuff right here monitors your flight control systems. As long as it's on and functioning, you're good. You'd have to monkey with them. Here are your engine start switches, cockpit voice recorder, and here you have air data sensor heat, windshield heat, or some of your heating systems, and your anti-ice, cabin interphone, windshield wiper, and I want to say up here you can align your INS at the beginning of your flight. And here are your fire suppression systems. Alright? So the overhead panel for the L1011 are really not that complicated. Down here, really not that complicated. Relatively straightforward. Let's go to the flight engineer station. This looks complex. In reality, if you're a relatively experienced simmer, this comes to you relatively straightforward. It's not that complicated. Let's go through it real fast. Start from the bottom. Here's your fuel jettison. Here are your engine fuel gauges, how much gas you got. Here is your APU. Gonna start this before I can do anything. Here are your APU gauges. Here's your engine oil, quantity, temperature, and pressure for engines 1, 2, and 3. Let's come over here. Here you have your fuel system. Fuel system for the left wing and the right wing, the various fuel tanks. Also, you got a fuel temperature. Come up here. Here you have your electrical system. Okay, your buses and your generators and all that good stuff. Generators, engines 1, 2, and 3. Because remember, folks, it's just your basic systems multiplied by 3. One system for each engine. That's why these things look a lot more difficult, or looks a lot more complex than it really is. Here you have your engine status, N2 for engines 1, 2, and 3, and vibration. Here you have another clock. Let's come up here. Here you have your hydraulic systems. Here you have 4 completely independent hydraulic systems. Any one can operate the plane. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here you have your fuel level, fuel pressure, on, off, auto. Here you have your pneumatics for engines 1, 2, and 3, where you have your bleed air. Okay, all these valves and whatnot, you can figure it out. It's really not that complicated. And over here you have your PAX systems, your air conditioning for pressurization and monitoring the cabin pressure and whatnot. And up here you have your fire detection systems and wheel wire fire test, fire extinguisher test, blah 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 blah, APU fire extinguisher. The flight engineer station, it looks intimidating and complex, but when you back off, because remember, folks, all the planes that you fly, whether it's the 757, 767, or whatever, they all have the same system. They all have the same, they all have the same systems. It's just that this is an older plane, and there was that much automation, so they had to break everything out. And since there's 3 engines, you have 3 times the gauges. But if you sit back and spend about an hour playing with this, it's really not that complicated. Alright, this aircraft does not have, I don't think, it didn't have it the last time I checked, it does not have a virtual cabin. Not that you need one. If you look at the L1011, it's a fat little guy. I mean, it's just big, has a lot of girth. And if you look at the pictures of this aircraft on the inside, it is kind of, very fat. Very, very spacious. The number 2 engine actually sits right here, and this is just a tunnel for the air to come in and go out that way. Alright, I've blabbed long enough. Let's see if we can go ahead and get this thing started. I turned the battery off, but some things are still on. Don't ask me why. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this thing started. I'm not going to go through the checklist, I'm just going to go through the basics, which means turn on your battery master, and then start the APU. To start the APU, you have to have this fuel pump on, but it depends on which aircraft you're using. Here, with Captain Sim, the fuel pumps don't seem to respond because it takes electricity from the APU, which isn't started yet. So all you need to do is just go ahead and click APU master power on and click start. And what you're going to see is the APU Engine meter goes up, EGT goes on, and you can hear the APU spooling up, and then everything comes to life. Alright? So the next thing you need to do is you need to turn on bleed air. There you go. Then you need to turn on your fuel pumps. All of them. Alright, these valves have to do with transfers and cross feeds. We don't need to worry about that. And as you can see, my fuel is a little bit jacked up. I got full tanks here, and half tanks here and here. Whatever. Okay. You can go ahead and reset these if you want. So APU is running, fuel tanks or fuel pumps are on. Next thing you need to do is you need to turn off the hydraulics. Don't ask me why, you just need to. Okay, see all the stuff lights up. Next thing you need to do is disable packs. So you don't want to turn off your air conditioning, but you do want to turn off the flow of bleed air to the air conditioning, because you want to use that bleed air to start the engines. Like so. Alright, and I want to say we're ready to start. So what you do then is you come over here, and we will start the number 3 engine first. Make sure your igniters, A, B, or both, whatever. Click and hold this down, and then come down here, and here it is spooling up, and you want N2 to get to about 20 something, and then you click. That injects fuel. Engine number, I guess that's engine number 3. That's this engine right here is now running. Let's see if we can confirm. There we go. We have rotation. Next we want to start engine number 2. That was number 3. Engine number 2, come here, click start. And down here, see it's spooling up. Once, because remember, there's also your N2 gauge right there. So now what we need to do is give it gas. There we go. And last but not least, engine number 1. Spooling up. And then you got a good light off there. Come back over to your flight engineer station. Now what you need to do is you need to make sure resume packs. That's bleed air to the air conditioning system. I imagine now, oops, I'm sorry. There, now you're getting high pressure bleed air from the engines. Doing that turns it off. We don't want to do that. Restore your hydraulics. And come over here. Next thing you want to do is you want to look at your electrical system, which is here, and make sure that you're getting juice from the engines. And we are. Engine number 1, engine number 2, engine number 3. We're still getting juice from the APU, but we don't need it now. Stop. There we go. So the APU is off. Engines are providing bleed air and electricity. And now, I mean, you can go ahead and set up the rest of the stuff. Go ahead and put in your runway heading, dial in your altitude. Everything else, it's like flying any other plane. Obviously, you want to make sure that your annunciation panel is clear. So I have a couple things here: electrical system, anti-skid. The flight engineer station for the Captain Sim L1011 is 100% modeled. I'm not sure how deep the simulation is. Probably not that deep. I mean, hell, you can't find documentation on the plane, so how sophisticated can the simulation be? But everything here is modeled. And everything here and up here is modeled. But like I said, once you get it started, setting it up for flight is just like any other plane, except you have this device instead of a flight management computer. But if you don't want to do that, just go ahead and do VOR to VOR. I mean, you have your nav1, you have your nav2, you have your HSI, you have this. Course selector is all the way over here. That kills me. But yeah, you have everything you need to fly the plane. So, have at it. Anyway, that's all I have. What I plan to do is I'm going to go ahead and fly this bad boy to my home airport of Port Columbus. That's going to be my next flight, or I'm just going to go ahead and continue this video, but you'll see that when I get that video published. And once I'm in Columbus, I might do another flight towards the East Coast, maybe with a Justflight L1011, just to compare and contrast that plane with this plane. Alright? Anyway, so that's all I have for this episode. I'm looking forward to taking more flights in the good old L1011. Hope you guys found this video useful. My name is Flightsimguy. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.